The crystal flute trembled lightly in my grasp as I noticed the faint, deliberate motion of my father's fingers. Something white, minuscule, fell silently into my drink, disappearing into the golden bubbles that shimmered in the dim light. Around us, the graduation reception gleamed with elegance, the glow of chandeliers casting dancing reflections across pristine tablecloths. Laughter echoed around the room, a sound that suddenly felt fragile, as though the ceiling might collapse under the weight of pretense. I didn't react outwardly, no gasp, no hesitation. I simply stood, holding the glass as if it were a simple toast, and made my way toward my sister. My name is Lauren. I'm 24 and an environmental engineer. This is the account of how I transformed years of familial betrayal into their public reckoning. Oh, seems you've taken my glass, I said softly, addressing Tiffany with a calm smile that didn't touch my eyes. The magazine with my groundbreaking research lay open beside her, the title boldly claiming her as the author. She arched an eyebrow, smirking with effortless confidence. "You're unusually selective tonight," she teased, swapping glasses without a second thought. "You know me?" I replied, my voice even calm, as if I were discussing the weather. Around us, guests laughed at what they assumed was harmless sibling teasing. I returned to my chair just as the event coordinator's voice carried across the room. "Let's raise our glasses to the graduate." Tiffany lifted the glass with an easy flourish, oblivious to the trap hidden in her own drink. My father's jaw clenched, his composure faltering. My mother's smile lingered too long, a slight stiffness betraying her control. I watched the realization dawn in their eyes, slow and undeniable, their carefully constructed evening starting to crumble. Hours earlier, I had entered the Skyline Terrace ballroom, ready to celebrate what should have been my achievement. The MC's voice had boomed, "Please welcome the Westbrook family and their remarkable daughter, Tiffany." Thunderous applause erupted. My father clapped as if she had secured an Olympic medal, my mother's grin stretching almost painfully across her face. And there I was, the youngest daughter, freshly graduated, receiving polite nods and faint claps, my presence almost invisible. The family photo was taken moments later, a posed display of normalcy. My mother leaned close, her perfume enveloping me, whispering, "Smile, parasite." She anticipated a meltdown, a scene she could use to reinforce her narrative. I didn't give it to her. Since childhood, I had been a shadow in my own home. At 14, I had won first place in the state science competition. The local newspaper featured a story, but the photo used depicted Tiffany guiding me, as if she had earned the achievement. When I objected, my father had told me, "No one enjoys a sore winner. Learn to share the spotlight." No acknowledgement of the fact that it was my victory, my effort. At 16, I had trained tirelessly for a half marathon. Tiffany had enrolled last minute and dropped halfway through. Yet family dinners were filled with praise for her courage, ignoring my top 10 finish entirely. Tonight, those countless small slights had sharpened into one weapon. I was seated on the edge of the room, near the kitchen doors that swung open and brushed against my chair, giving me a clear view of the true center of attention. My parents were perched like royalty, Tiffany by their side, chatting animatedly with the editor of a glossy magazine. And there it was, the open publication featuring my research, months of labor condensed into 2 vivid pages. Yet the name at the top was Tiffany's. A slow, controlled heat rose in my chest, but I had learned the value of patience. Reacting too early only validated their version of events. The first subtle shift had come earlier, at the dessert station. My mother, laughing with her acquaintances, allowed her voice to drift just enough for me to hear. "Remember when Lauren nearly got expelled? Missed weeks of mandatory seminars?" Polite chuckles followed. I responded evenly, casually. "I was on an academic exchange in Europe, arranged through my department chair." My tone was calm, measured, almost conversational, but I caught the barely perceptible twitch of her smile before she turned away. Soon after, my friend Henry appeared by my side, a quiet presence that anchored me in the midst of the unfolding confrontation. I adjusted the camera straps across my shoulder, the familiar weight grounding me as I scanned the room. As the event's official photographer, I'd spent the entire evening quietly observing, noticing patterns most overlooked. "You know about the invitations, don't you?" Henry murmured beside me. I tilted my head, puzzled. He leaned closer. "They printed your arrival time 30 minutes later than everyone else's. Just yours. Guests thought they were on time, but by the time they arrived, all the first photographs had been taken. It made it look like you were late." I didn't even need to reply. Of course, they'd orchestrated it. No mention of my name in the introductions, the initial recognition stolen. Everything was deliberate, a chain of calculated moves. Then Aunt Rebecca brushed past me, slipping a small envelope into my hand. No words, just a steady gaze that spoke volumes. She had always been my silent ally, her role in the university registrar's office granting her access to my records. On the balcony, beneath the cool night air, I opened the envelope. Inside were photocopies of my scholarship certificates, grant approvals, and official receipts, all stamped with my name and student ID. Her note was simple but powerful. "For when they push too far." I tucked the papers securely into my clutch. They believed my stubbornness was my only defense. They didn't realize I had evidence. Returning to the room, I carefully maintained a neutral expression as the evening's rhythm continued. My parents' glances toward me had grown more frequent, loaded with unspoken tension. Tiffany's laughter rang too loud, her posture slightly rigid. Across the room, Henry caught my eye, tilting his head toward a side corridor. Not a casual gesture. I followed him quietly, my heels muted against the carpet, until we reached a service door, left ajar just enough to hear through. My father's voice, calm but unmistakably precise, carried through the crack. "Make sure she drinks it. No scene, no complications." My mother responded, "She'll just seem faint from the champagne." The event coordinator, Vanessa, chimed in, agreeing to cue the toast. Henry's phone was recording. I memorized every word, my chest tightening. This was no longer a simple humiliation. They intended to remove me from the equation entirely. I stepped back from the doorway as if it radiated heat. My pulse raced, nerves alight, every instinct screaming. They wanted me gone, not just embarrassed. "You have everything?" I whispered. "Clear as day," Henry replied. "But don't move too soon. They'll twist it." Breathing deeply to steady myself, I returned to the ballroom. Everything glittered as though nothing had happened. Servers moved in flawless choreography, arranging flutes of champagne with practiced precision. My parents had stopped mingling, their attention entirely fixed on me. I held my smile in place, clutching my bag tightly, waiting. When a server set a glass before me, Neil appeared, that polished, reassuring smile in place. "Making sure you're prepared," he said. As I pretended to adjust my silverware, I noticed it. The subtle flick of his fingers, something small dropped into my drink. The tiniest fizz, gone before anyone could notice. Meanwhile, Tiffany drank deeply from the glass I had discreetly swapped. Minutes later, chaos erupted. Her laughter cut off mid-sentence. She stumbled, bracing herself on the table. Utensils clattered to the floor. Gasps swept through the crowd. My parents rushed to her side, their concern impeccable, yet I caught a fleeting flash of fear in their eyes. Henry was at my side, phone angled just right. Every second recorded, time-stamped, irrefutable. Neil's hand, the drop, the fizz, the switch. I could have confronted them immediately, ended it all, but I didn't. Justice required patience. Let them believe they still held power. Let them climb higher, and then their fall would be spectacular. The ballroom had transformed. Glittering celebration became controlled pandemonium. Paramedics pushed through, their bags swinging. Officers stationed at the entrance shifting closer, monitoring the unfolding incident. My parents clung to their act, Neil murmuring reassurances, Victoria pressing a napkin to her daughter's lips. But their eyes kept darting toward me. Perfect. Slowly, I rose from my seat, heels clicking against the marble floor, every movement deliberate. Tonight, the balance of power had shifted, and I would make sure the entire room saw it. I moved across the carpet without a sound, keeping my eyes fixed on the AV booth tucked away in the corner. The technician I'd noticed earlier managing the slideshow looked up in surprise as I slid the USB drive Henry had handed me into his hand. "Start this," I said softly, my gaze unwavering. He nodded, a flicker of confusion crossing his face. The large screen above the stage blinked, the familiar slideshow of polished family memories disappearing mid-frame. Then the footage began. Neil loomed over my seat, fingers deftly dropping something into my champagne. The grainy video captured the fizz, the packet, the quiet switch, and Tiffany's oblivious sip. A sharp gasp sliced through the crowd. Phones appeared in hands like lightning. Someone near the front muttered, almost in disbelief, That's attempted poisoning." From the edge of the crowd, Aunt Rebecca's voice rang out, steady and unwavering. "I have records proving Lauren funded her own education. These two have been deceiving everyone for years." She lifted an envelope high, pages gleaming under the lights. Scholarship letters, grant confirmations, bank statements. The truth was finally out, undeniable. The room shifted instantly. Guests who had kept polite distance now edged away from my parents. Murmurs rippled like a current. The police, already present for security, moved with purpose. I stepped forward, voice calm, letting it cut through the stunned silence. My whole life, I'd been told to hold my tongue, to be small. Tonight proved why silence always favored them. I let that truth hang in the air. 2 officers approached my parents. Neil's face was impassive, but Victoria's carefully maintained smile had sharpened into something predatory. I set a small bundle on the head table, the family crest pendant, the house keys, and an envelope with my signed withdrawal from every shared asset. "These are yours," I said. "I'm reclaiming my name, my time, my life." Somewhere in the crowd, a single voice murmured approvingly. Rebecca allowed herself a faint, satisfied smile, like she'd been waiting decades for this. But the liberation wasn't in walking away, it was in what lay ahead. The glass doors of the Skyline Terrace closed behind me, a soft click marking the end of one chapter. Outside, the night was crisp and clear, Puget Sound glimmering beneath the city lights. I caught my reflection in the glass and barely recognized the woman staring back. Head held high, shoulders squared. I liked this version of myself better than the one who had walked in hours earlier. By dawn, the video had already spread far beyond my expectations. Henry had shared it across social media and forwarded it to news outlets while I rested at his apartment for the next few days, letting the immediate chaos settle. Local news anchors now spoke my name with the seriousness once reserved for my parents. Legal processes moved swiftly. Charges of attempted poisoning and conspiracy were filed before the week was out. Tiffany recovered physically within 2 days. The sedatives hadn't been lethal, but the narrative of her innocence crumbled in a city where witnesses had seen years of stolen credit firsthand. 6 months later, she reached out by email to apologize. My reply was firm. No harm intended, but our connection was permanently severed. After that, she was blocked from every platform, every form of contact. My parents' allies abandoned them. Sponsors vanished. Invitations once flooding their calendars went silent. The social circles they had meticulously courted now avoided them. I settled into a modest apartment near the University District 3 weeks later. Small, unassuming, completely mine. Paid for by my own work, under my own name, on my own terms. I began consulting for an environmental engineering firm, building meaningful projects that didn't require a family emblem to matter. Henry and I remained close. His support that night had cemented a bond one knew would endure. A month after the graduation party, at the final settlement meeting arranged by our lawyers, I placed a signed document on the table. A full relinquishment of any claim to the family estate, along with a legal restriction preventing my parents from ever using my name or achievements for social gain. They would serve 6 months of house arrest, followed by 5 years of probation for the poisoning attempt, a lenient sentence influenced by their once sterling reputation. "This is the last time you profit from my existence," I told them. Victoria opened her mouth to protest, but I was already on my feet. That evening, I boarded the ferry, leaning on the railing as the skyline blurred behind me. Justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's the quiet sound of a door closing forever. And once you learn to walk away, you begin to understand how far you can go. Have you ever had to leave your family to protect yourself? You're not alone. Share your experiences in the comments. Whether it's morning coffee or a late-night reflection, I'd love to hear your story. And for those still seeking growth and knowledge, here's a little bonus. If you enjoy learning like I do, you should try audiobooks. I've partnered with Audible to give you a free first month, granting access to over 500,000 titles. Every detail is in the description, don't miss out.